technology, y'all. We're still trying to always get it going. You know what happens. Yeah, in fact, AFBH, we're known for combining our clinical excellence with cultural responsiveness, um, care and community. We take pride in being in the community, and that's why we were invited here today to speak about things. And we know that the community aspect of it is really crucial and vital to working with each other, especially on a cultural basis. And our AFBH has been recognized through many honors, including being celebrated as a Small Business 50 Companies to Watch and multiple leadership awards, such as West Michigan Woman of the Year, Brilliance Award, highlighting innovation and service in behavioral health. Also, I want to talk about what our programs. So before I tell you about what our topic is today, I also want to introduce my colleague at AFBH is Ashley Miller, and she's
Hello.
Thank you.
You want to describe a quick background of how?
Yeah, so my name is Ashley Miller. I am originally from Flint, Michigan, and I was recently just hired at Adolescent and Family Behavioral Health Services as a therapist. So I am fairly new, but very knowledgeable. If you guys have any questions, feel free to come up after the presentation and talk more. Thank you.
What we have is those are many brochures about our program. We encourage everybody to sign up for our newsletter. We would tell you about our many programs and things that we offer and do at our practice. So today, I'm invited to talk about men's wellness conversation. And this is an important topic because for many African immigrant men, as you all are, mental health is often experienced at the intersection of migration stress, masculinity, cultural identity, family responsibility, race, and silence. Many men know how to survive, provide, and endure, but many have never been taught how to carry pressure without silently breaking. While we will talk about mental health awareness, it is honoring your strength, your sacrifice, your identity, and the weight many of you carry. It took strength to come to the U.S., and I know it also takes strength for men to attend such events as these, because you are not often rewarded or honored for doing it. So let's just take a moment, look around, and honor all the strength that is in this room today. Each of you know what this journey has taken for you, and in it, there are some common threads for those here too. So you just get a round of applause for people that are being here. Thank you. And Jay, you have carried much strength that brought you here, but strength also needs space. Paying attention to your mental health is not a sign of weakness. It's allowing a safe and brave space to be strong differently than what you have been accustomed to. Wise men reflect. Strong men recognize pressure. Leadership includes emotional awareness. So, some of those things by saying, oh, well, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't think anybody will listen, or I don't trust. Well, you're here today because you trust to have me speak to you. You trust to want to learn and want to see, like, hey, you know, I don't want to be a number that doesn't get help, but I think I need it because everybody does, and it's okay. So, I will briefly go over some of the topics that we go through. So you can see migration stress. Many African immigrant men arrive carrying that. Now, how many of you, if you could see some of these things you've probably experienced in your life? Coming over to the United States, the language barrier. Can you raise your hand if you experienced that? Anybody raise your hand? Yeah. Pressure to succeed quickly. Fear of disappointing your family back home because you know you have to go back home at some point in time, right? The culture shock. This is completely different than where you came from, right? I see you saying that, right? Can anybody else raise their hand? Probably everybody, right? Right? The racial reclassification, unfamiliar with racial dynamics in America. If me and you, we walk outside, they may see both of us as black. Well, I'm black from America, but you are, where were you originally born?
I'm North African.
Right. So you're gonna be classified as an African, not than a black man, right? But sometimes in America, they're not gonna recognize our differences. They're gonna think we're the same.
Yeah.
They're gonna, if Ashley walks out, me and her will be the same, but you're gonna be classified as, you know, exactly the same, but in reality, you're from the Congo. So those are the type of things that like, I know and we are sensitive that you experience, you know. Like the quote says, how do I remain who I am without losing myself here? And I know at times that can create shame, frustration, quiet depression, and also irritability rather than just sadness. Also, that quote says, the psychological burden is often heavier because there are multiple identities under pressure simultaneously. Again, going into migration stress, you can also be feeling misunderstood. Again, everybody doesn't know where your background is, where your culture is, what your values are. Some values are people don't shake hands or people don't nod when they say hello. You know, you probably have had that. You raise your hand and have some values that are different than what you've seen coming here. Anybody?
Some.
Some.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you may feel like you're losing confidence because of that, from those social invincibility things. And then you feel like starting over. You're kind of rebuilding a different life here in America, and you're in a new, completely different environment. Including emotional expression, culturally restricted. You said cultural messages, you have to solve problems, you do not complain, protecting your dignity. And distress is what we talk about in our practice. And it may show up sometimes as you just don't say anything at all, you're silent, or you're anger, or you have withdrawal. You may have physical complaints. Also spiritualizing all distress without naming what your emotion is. You see the highlight differences from white American mental health framework where emotional naming is more normalized. They want you to say, tell me what your emotion is. Tell me you're frustrated. Tell me you're depressed. Tell me you're angry. You know, tell me you're calm. But it is still not as welcome for men as well as women. This is some of the emotional expression. It can look like anger, fatigue, you're tired, loss of motivation. You can have sleep problems, withdrawal, and irritability. Let's say show of hands of anybody that experienced these things, emotional expression or depression. Ever have headaches? Anybody raise their hand at it? You know, stomach issues at times, you know, your chest gets tight, you kind of feel like, you know, nervous at that time. And just sometimes you're just tired, right? Probably we all do that, you know, so. You know, you're not alone in those feelings, and that's what we have. And then the racial experience. Here's a story. Recently arrived African immigrant man may not initially identify as black in the same historical way as African Americans do. I was just giving an example, right? Me and you are walking outside. What's going to happen? We're both going to be labeled as black, but again, you know that you're from the Congo, right? Those stereotypes. Sometimes with policing fears and workplace bias. At the job, they may, you know, look at you different and may have a different bias for you because you're from a different country. And back home, you were simply yourself, right? Now you're treated like through race first because that's just, there's no way around it. That's what our country does, the United States. We focus on race. And you probably ever have, like, you had to fill out things and on an application and in the census, and so tell me, raise your hand, what do you fill? What do you write down? Because I know they say Native American or white American or black. Tell somebody, what do you fill out?
This year, go ahead.
Yeah, you thought, I put like, for me, I put like the black African American.
Yeah, yeah, see? But did it kind of confuse you at first, kind of like, what do I do? Or just kind of strike you as like, because you don't really see that, right?
Yeah.
Where are you from?
I'm from Sierra Leone, West Africa.
Okay, Sierra Leone. Yeah, so this is how they identify. They call it a census. And so you get identified by your class and your race. And so whether you're Native American or you're Hispanic American, whether you're white, you're black African American, everybody has a category. And so that's how they kind of do that. But sometimes it cannot feel good because that label also, they think if something goes wrong, they're labeling you by your race. Also, there's areas of your family role. I know you have your extended family, you know, you have to go back home, you have financial obligations there. Um, You have the burden and the weight that carries that you have to go back and provide for your family members. And you prepare that pressure to be successful can sometimes be hard. Your expectations always as men is to be strong and at all times for your wife, your family, your children. Failure often feels bigger than personal failure. It can feel communal, but you're not alone. It happens here in the United States. Another thing with family role, marriage and fatherhood under pressure, provide pressure, emotional disconnection, parenting across two cultures. How many of them ever say you experienced that? You have family here, then you have family back home. Anybody raise their hands that they experience? Your family may depend on your strength, but your strength is greater when your mind is healthy, your heart is honest, and your burdens are not carried alone. Then we have just trauma. And this is where the silence comes in, it's unspoken trauma. What is trauma? Trauma is emotional, psychological, and sometimes physical response to an event or series of events that overwhelms a person's ability to cope, creates a sense of helplessness, fear, danger, or loss of control, and leaves lasting effects on how the mind, body, emotions, or relationships function. Here are some examples. You have political trauma, war exposure, displacement, separation from your family, grief and losses that you just never talked about or processed. But because survival was prioritized, trauma may never have been named. You called it that. So some men may call it stress, they may call it pressure, something they just pushed right through and got through it. But sometimes what was pushed through was actually trauma. And we have our unspoken trauma, which goes into silence, some things that just are unspoken but not said. You're attached to the event, how a person interprets and makes sense of what happened shapes their life. Available support, the presence or absence of emotional, social, and practical support. Previous experiences, something prior trauma or adversity can increase your vulnerability. Then it looks at your age, so that younger individuals or those in vulnerable states may be more deeply affected because of just maturity. And then sense of safety, whether a person feels safe following an event significantly affects recovery. They want to feel trustworthy, they want to feel safe that somebody can be there for them and be a source of support and can provide. This is sometimes how trauma is named. It can show up as difficulty sleeping, irritability, you're hyper alert, your emotional numbness, avoidance, your body tension, mistrust. Mistrust can be a lot, especially culture-wise. If you don't just trust somebody from your past, and you don't know, hey, I'm not sure that you are capable of that, and so that's where, we help and come in saying, hey, you do have somebody that can not look at you, and we don't look at any individual as any different, and we can trust that we can try to help you do whatever you're going. Like I said, life was hard, we went through many things, it was not easy, God helped us, we survived. Or they may report, I think too much, my mind is never quiet, I cannot sleep, I am easily angry, I feel pressure, I do not trust people, my heart is heavy. We need to say that. It's okay to name how you're feeling, because you're not alone. A lot of people feel that way. Everything I'm reading on here, I felt that way at times. May not feel as comfortable saying this, but this is where we're here today. We want us men to feel that you can have a safe space to do that. That does not mean that trauma is absent. It means it is named differently. Not every painful experience becomes trauma. A painful event becomes traumatic when it overwhelms a person's ability to process, recover, or feel safe. And sometimes we think we can all do it ourselves and we can make it on our own, and we can feel like, hey, I don't need anybody to help with that. But sometimes it is too overwhelming and too much that it doesn't feel, and that's where it's important to seek help like that and talk. Trauma is often interpreted through strength, not injury. How did this hurt you? Like you could say. Then many African Americans may say, how did I survive it? That means identity becomes linked to endurance. So that's kind of like an overview of basically what we feel that like a lot of the barriers and things that like what happens when, you know, men from Africa and you migrate and come over to this country and you experience, and so just wanted to present that like these are some of the things we see and we know that you're not alone, and so but it'll always be a bridge and guide to help you. So I know Vince has said that, you know, some of the topics that I've talked about, you all would kind of have group discussion, and I can answer, and my colleague Ashley can help you answer some of those questions pertaining to, the mental health portion of that, and like, when is it okay to think about like, hey, I think I could deal with this on my own, but no, I may need to talk to somebody. So, that's it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yep.
So I think we can go ahead and ask if you have a target question for us. We'll be able to answer the question. Avoid the one teachers present.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to kind of come back to one of the topics that you mentioned. I mean, personally, it is something that has been somewhat a mystery to me, like the race relationship in the US. And so just reading from history and just having, learned a lot of things before coming, but experiencing all the dynamics is very different from just reading it about. And so it has always fascinated me, like the experience that, let's say, African Americans that were kind of born and grew up here have. And of course, it took a few years for me to start noticing things. I can only imagine how difficult it might be, because if your identity is so tightly tied to the color of your skin, it's just so problematic. And in places that I've worked, I've just happened, like in almost every position that I've had, that was a manager who is managing all white middle-aged men, right? And so, and it has been very problematic. I remember in one of my first big job where my employer would come and just clearly say how they're upset that I got the job. It should have been theirs. And I'm just, and he's no way qualified. I mean, he's not even anywhere near qualified to have that type of job. And I'm just wondering why he feels he can't say that. Or like when I was discussing this with my managers, who also happen to be white, but a little bit more educated, and then they started explaining to me some of the aspect and the history and so on. It was just, I always want to really see, how do you guys manage that? Like, how can you live your entire life where you have to kind of watch your back about something you cannot fundamentally change about yourself? That must be so, that must be so hard.
So thank you for that. And this is like kind of what I was presenting to you all, but like, feeling that way back, this is something that we just are born into. Like the pressure we have being like Black Americans, we're born into that. So we are taught by our parents and foreparents to just kind of push and persevere through. We know that race is there. But if we label it all the time, well, you just treat me like this because Black, it can counteract and it can be easily like, well, so we try to focus on like experience of what we're working with, doing, like you said, talking to the manager, but understanding that this may be a difficult burden for it. But sometimes it's just the fact that we know that it's there and we have to just ignore it and focus on what we have to do, because the only thing to change their mindset is you being a good worker, you doing this, and then, spirituality plays a good piece of it, having the faith to endure, to say, you know what, God is in control of this, but it is troubling. It is very frustrating. And we live here, and we were born into this, as well as you coming over into this country.
Yeah, you kind of get mixed up in it.
And
it's like you just get disoriented.
Yeah.
It's just, because it's just something that you don't think about back home,
Yeah.
Whether you're poor or rich and so on, even if you find people that are really extremely poor, like it will never be because of the color of their skin. It will just never be. And there's this thing where it's almost automatically supposed that Africa is mostly black, but more than half of Africa is not even black, like, and you have all these colors everywhere, and it's just something just never happens. You just never think about it, and then yes, like you have to think about it all the time, and it's tiring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anybody else has a question?
I guess mine is not really a question, but more of a comment that, you mentioned that, when we come here, we all kind of get labeled the same.
Mm-hmm.
But, the reality is, as you said, like for you guys who are born here, you have your parents, your grandparents who kind of teach you how to navigate the system. But I think a lot of us, when we come here, I'm not saying everybody, the majority of us are very vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know how to interact with the police.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us never saw a gun or a police with a gun until we came to the United States. And all of a sudden, you're interacting with them. It's like, whoa, And so it's easy, to default back. You do whatever you do, but you just go back to the house. And so even if you want to be social, you are not equipped to be in a social interacting with other people, just because you can be so vulnerable. And I know we are from different places, so people have like different experiences. I can also see how it can be really tricky for everybody to be in the same page. But I've always wondered if there could be a way, just for us Africans, even though we are labeled together, how we can, I don't know if there's a way to prepare us even before coming here, just to know, how to come and I don't know the right word to say, but just to integrate better, because I think a lot of people are vulnerable. And by the time, as you said, many years, by the time you kind of learn how actually things are and why you're being treated, how treated the way you are treated and how you're feeling, and it's actually not because you're feeling that with me, it's not coming from me, it's actually being kind of pushed into you to feel that way.
I think, thank you for that, thank you for those words. Where are you from, Rich?
Kenya.
Okay, Kenya.
Mhm.
So with the policing part, that has been, you probably learned coming into this country, has been a significant thing, labeling. We have certain terms as like DWB, driving while black, racial profiling. And so I have been stopped and didn't do anything just because of the color of my skin and let go. So education is a big portion of that. Getting involved with like your local community, or within that, having somebody speak to you and talk to you about like ways to like, hey, if somebody does stop you, make sure you're not seeing when you're looking at your registration and your license, if you're reaching over to that, they could think it's a gun.
Right.
And so knowing those things, it's an educational portion. And just having somebody like before you come here, integrating those type of things. Because I would feel vulnerable too. It's like, I don't even know. I never heard about it. And so as soon as I come in this country again, whether we still look alike or whether we do have the same color, but we're from different aspects, the police don't think so.
Yeah.
They're not. And so just learning how to like, hey, certain questions they don't want, they may look at, you may say, why are you stopping me? And they may think you're being disobedient to them, but you just want to know why.
Mm-hmm.
So having a form of education, and that's, like I said, being involved in your community of who you are, and like having like, this is like where we're coming out and speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Having police come out and speak and have them speak about like, this is what you should do. And that's a good idea, and that's like something that when you guys are all talking, like say, hey, you connecting with them, because the educational part is, if you don't know, then that's where you're vulnerable to a lot of things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brother, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
My name is Samuel. After I've not been around, I'm 23 years old, but
You said 23?
23.
Okay.
I've noticed something, regardless you're black or white as a man, most of your stress come with how ambitious are you with your ambitions, Maybe you're seeking to do something and you like, I want to get this done. And then that is with everybody. Now, how do you deal with the stress of I need to get this done as a man, I need to get this great, okay? You get your ambitions going, and you go, how do I get this done? Sometimes it might not go your way, you're like, no, I needed this, I needed to get this done. So how would you recommend dealing with that, with the stress that comes with ambition?
So we ambition, okay, so your example would be like if you had something to do, like a deadline to get done?
Of course, goals.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would, have your, like, whatever you're doing, have it like a certain priority is, and knowing like the communication of who you're talking with, to not make sure it's so stressful that you're like missing some things and that you're working. And so, talking about it and communicating with, certain people can make you like, hey, I'm dealing with this, have you dealt with this as well? So knowing that you're not alone with that and getting the help with that can relieve that. And when we talk about some things, is breathing. Have you ever tried some breathing exercises? Whew, and we teach that. Yeah, we teach some the breathing. It's actually at our practice, one of our skills under the stress tolerance is called TIP skill. And that's kind of taking some breathing relaxations, you're counting, and then doing that again. And sometimes just like slowing down on what you're doing and noticing that, hey, I can eventually get this done, but I don't have to like make sure I make a mistake because I'm stressed. Okay.
Of course, I want more question, because we come here, of course, with black. Now, it's much easier, just as you said, it's very easy to maybe misunderstand or rightly understand something regarding race differences. Now, how do we differentiate? How can we differentiate between okay, has to do with the race towards me, or maybe this is just a part of the human beings? Maybe that guy don't like me because my behavior. Okay, maybe they don't. Maybe it's not because I'm black. Maybe it's just how I'm. It's more than mine, probably not much. So how can we learn to differentiate between racism, okay, and
Just normal interaction.
human beings? Okay, because wherever there is stone, they're gonna collide with each other.
Honestly, there is not really one easy answer to that. What you can do is, because differentiation is sometimes, they don't differentiate with what's different, but it's how like you respond to, I'll go to like your job aspect. They're gonna not differentiate with that, they're gonna see it differently, but if you still just decide to work and say, well, I'm not one of those, a lot of it's communication. Letting them know who you are, where you're from, and you don't associate with what that is, even though that may be your color. A lot of just like, sometimes you gotta show your work or show your actions, because a lot of people perception, and then that's where I'm talking about the stereotype, is they already have it in their mind. And so you're gonna change, sometimes somebody's mindset, but you can change by your actions, you can change by your words, you can change by your response. Not letting them see you frustrated, not letting them see you anger. We know that's there, but working on say, okay, what? I'm gonna kind of smile instead, and and kind of look over that. And that could be difficult, but that's the work of the differences coming in this country. Like, from like where you are, you don't have to, deal with that.
Can I add something? Just to say that also, if you are ambitious, you're trying to do something, I think being able to distinguish you failing or it taking longer to achieve what you're trying to achieve. Is the limit your abilities, or actually there are invisible barriers that are put in place to make it harder for you to get to where you need to be? Because there could be like two situations whereby you're not skilled enough to maybe to get where you need to be, but you could also be skilled enough, but there are barriers, invisible barriers, and I think the more maybe you work in corporate, you may start like distinguishing those, but being able to distinguish what is limiting you, I think that's the starting point, because then you can find, okay, this is the issue, how do I overcome it? If it's invisible barriers and you can tell you have the skill, but there are invisible barriers, then how do you overcome that? Then at least when you're working towards that, you know exactly what you're attacking to enable you to get where you need to be.
Yeah, of course.
That's good, those individual
Yeah.
barriers are good.
And to add to that question,
I think there's a question.
I think mine is a comment, and thank you for the presentation.
Well,
When I stepped in America, of course, the culture is very different from where I come from. I also come from Kenya. I'm happy to hear there's a Kenyan there. Now, the first 3 weeks, you know, you really try to find your way around, because you receive so many signals. You have to do this, you have to do that, you are black, you cannot do that. So finally you land your job, you land a job that you never even trained in, because what you trained in, you cannot even make a breakthrough there first. Because they view your qualifications as nothing. You know, you just have to start afresh. Now, when you get to that, your supervisor tells you that, you know, what do you have? I have a degree in this and that. He tells you now, this is the only position you can ever reach in this company. You can, in fact, I'm following up what he's saying. You are qualified even to be a manager, but you will never go past this because of where you're coming from. And he told me that we believe in Africa is just a jungle.
Wow.
Do you have internet in Africa? I told them, yes. How did we land here? We landed because of information we got from the internet. Do you have television sets? Do you have cars? You know, many things. So it is a moment of really trying to make sure that you prove yourself that you're worth even better than them. All right? But there's always that, now I'm following up what my brother said, there's always that
show your worth.
barrier. It could be, you could even see it. In fact, my supervisor just told me you cannot go beyond this point. If you want to go beyond this point, you leave this company. Look for a job elsewhere. So I know where I can be. But I show up every day, we smile, we laugh, but I know that's where.
You know where you can go.
Yes. So what I'm trying to say is, I think what you need to do is just to build yourself, and when the time comes for you to move on.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you start thinking about it, you'll go back home. You'll go back home.
So,
To make a comment,
yeah, just to respond, again, this is where, and Ashley may be able to share that too, but from a woman's standpoint, but from a man, a black American man in here, I've experienced that same thing.
Yes.
But I had the education, but I had to get to that, although I couldn't advance, you see my job, but I was still looked at as maybe a white counterpart. He didn't have the same education as me. So what could I do? I cannot argue that, right? Because this is what so I have to look at it as I have to show my worth through education. And then even with that, well, you didn't experience. Well, I got the education, but you're not experienced. So I have to wait to get my more experience. And then the company, as you said, you were telling this gentleman here, hey, let me get my experience in this company enough. Go somewhere else, and the more experience you get, because then that job will say, hey, you have this job, you have this, and the more experience, and even at your young age, you just getting more experience, you'll eventually be able to, make more or get a better job.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Being an American, and I'm just so excited to be amongst my African brothers. This is a wonderful. I just stepped into it, so I'm thankful. But nevertheless, even as Black Americans, even as having this skin tone and being from America, that same thing, that you talk about, brother.
Yeah.
We experienced it.
Exactly.
And so, I'll just tell a quick story, and hopefully it'll open some things up. But I was a freshman in high school, and I lived out in Kentwood, and we just moved out there. I moved out there 12 years old, and we're the only black people out there. And but my dad, he sends me to Grand Rapids Catholic Central. It's 98, 96, 97% white at the time, 1981, 14 years old. And so I went to this school, that I didn't know anything about. But they had a tradition. They had schools when you come up as a little person, you know, you're 6, 7, you know, 8, they have their own little elementary school. So there's this Catholic people, they have the small schools and then they all go to the big school. And so when they go to the big school knows everybody that went to the small school. And so I'm a football player and I come from out of nowhere. They don't know nothing about me. And so I get on the football team and I'm the best athlete on the team. But the team is already chosen, every position, everybody's picked. And it's all white boys. Now there are 2 other black boys that went to those smaller schools that were on that team, but they cared nothing about them.
Yeah.
They didn't even play. But I was better than all of them. And I played some of them when I was small because we had a football league for boys in Grand Rapids, and so I played some of those Catholic boys. So some of them knew of me. But their team was already picked, so they let me play defense, brother. They let me play defense. And so my dad, he saw we played a game and I was on defense. My dad so my dad had to come up to that school and he says, my son is better than all of those running backs you got. Why isn't he playing running back? So they put me at running back. And fortunately, I was able to back up everything my father said. My father, hey, my son can do this, do that. But then I was able to do this and do that. And so I became the best football player in the whole school. But they held me down. They only let me do so much. Like you only can go this far. We only can let you run the ball 15 times a game. And so what I'm trying to say is, by the time I'm 17, 18, I'm one of the best players in all of Michigan. I'm number 18 in the whole state. Now they with the racism still held me down, but because I fought through it and I didn't listen to them, you only can do this much. Okay, sure. Okay, whatever you say. But whatever I was given my chance, I did the best I could. And other people saw me. And when I was a senior, Eastern Michigan University said, we want to give you this scholarship. You can come to our school for free. And so I was able to go to college for free. And if I put my head down and if I don't fight through, if my dad doesn't come, and if I don't prove my dad right, then I never make it. So now in this city, I'm a legend. Everybody knows, so that's Bobby Ford. Oh, he was, because I fought through. And so even though you're not from America, you're still black. And they don't care where you're from. They don't care where you're from. They just want to let you know that you only can go so far. But we have to not listen to that. And we have to learn everything they teach us. We have to be the best. Because even on my jobs after high school, after college, after I grew up, today, I still go to these jobs and I learn them and I become the best. And then they have to say, wow, we really need you now. We really need you. So won't you stay and we give you more money? We want you to do this over here. And so that's what we have to get to as black men, as black people. We have to learn their world, their language, their jobs, their conversations, and then we have to be better than them at all of that. And that's our only choice. We have no other choice but to be better than them. And so, we start small, we start little, so what? God says in the Bible, do not despise small beginnings. Because small beginnings become great things. And so that's what I live by that today. I don't listen to what they say. I know I'm the only black person in the room. Like right now, I'm on a job with all women. I'm a spiritual counselor in Muskegon. All white women, one Mexican woman. But we went to an outing yesterday and I got to speak and they got to sit back and watch me. And then they looked at me, oh, Robert, oh, you were so wonderful. You talk so good. You this, you that. And so now they know. But I still want to even, no matter, I don't care if you're a woman or a man, I want to be better than you, especially if you're not my color. And so I want to encourage all you brothers, do not despise small beginnings. When they tell you you only can go so far, smile at them, smile. Okay, sure. And then you do your homework, you go to the internet, you learn your job, you put in, hey, this machine, the internet will teach you. YouTube will teach you. And you learn and you go back and you just be better, you get better every day. And then you say, you know what? I think I'm gonna go find another job. I've learned your job. And then they're gonna say, wait a minute, brother, hold up. Wait. We need you. I know we said that you couldn't, but we have another position for you. So that's what we want to make them. We want to make them need us. And then they will be ashamed. And then they will try to keep us and give us more money.
All right, thank you so
And
much.
more opportunities.
Thank you so much for your comments. Yes, we can take only one more question, and we can now start working on our question is on that we can see on the table. Who has a speaker? Who has you have anything? You have to ask something?
Yeah, I got one. Thank you, guys. I see we're talking a lot about race, and so I'm a little bit confused sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, is this an issue of race, or is this an issue of value? Okay, where my value is at the moment. Did they let me go because I'm black, or did they let me go because at that particular moment, I did not grow, my value was not where it needed to be in order to sustain that particular position. So how do you understand the difference between maybe my value or my race? How? Because I see a lot of times we tend to maybe sometimes mix that up between, okay, I mean, we had a black president, of course, right? So we can go higher. I believe we can go higher. No, we tend to get mixed up a bit. Is it, am I valuable enough, okay, or is this because of race? So how do I handle that?
Best way sometimes to handle that is communication, and because sometimes they combine those together. It may be you're not skilled enough, and it may be because you're black, but asking as best as you can. Sometimes you may not know, or somebody else that may have been at that company, can you let me know what it was? And this is where I say sometimes as men, we have that unspoken silence. It's just because I'm black, or just because I'm African, and we don't want to speak about it. We almost assume. But, my mother used to tell me, nothing's a failure but a try, Nothing beats a failure but a try. So at least you could say, I would like to know, can you give me that answer? And because other than that, you at least have some sort of perspective, because at some point in times, they may not tell you. And so it is hard to differentiate that, because it can be a label. But sometimes we gotta focus on, okay, I don't know if it's because my value, I know it's because I'm black, but I'm gonna take that. And if nobody's telling me, I'm just gonna continue to persevere, have the resilience. And that's just what we are about as African and as black people. We are the most resilient people in the world. We're gonna not let that stop us. Like General Bobby said, we're still gonna push through. And hey, if that door was closed, another one can be open.
Thank you so much. I think that was it. So we're gonna, as I said, we're gonna be working on those questions that you can see on the table. But before you do that, let's welcome our CEO and founder of Crips of Africa to say hello to everybody.
Hi. Well, I just want to say thank you for coming today. It's very important that we have you guys in these sessions so that we can work together to improve our mental health in general, but more so our mental health. So thank you so much. And of course, I'm so grateful. We've been partnering for the last 2 sessions with Dr. Valencia and your program. And how many were here last mental health? Yeah, January. So it was bigger. We had almost 40 But we don't want to be discouraged by numbers because I know like when one person is here, it's a ripple effect. You go tell another guy, you go help them through difficult times. So like, let's keep telling others about this. And I know my team gave you a lot of information about what we do, even our soccer for men, and bringing youth into the program. And yeah, so we are really, really grateful. I'm so glad we could be a part of this. And we look forward. I believe that the team has shared a lot, so I will try to share more. But the reason we do this is also because, which is on this, the cultural part, and also because when we come here for a lot of our African men and boys, there's always also that disconnect, especially if you are first generation and your parents are immigrants. You feel like you're kind of splitting up. One person is thinking more like you're growing up here, but your parents are also raising you in a way that, you know, it's how we were raised back in Africa. And we've done so many different sessions about bridging the gap. Bridging the gap is usually where we try to bridge and kind of like reduce the gap between Africans and African Americans, or Afro-Caribbeans, or Black diaspora. So we hope that these gaps can be closed by each one of you guys, and of course our experts that we are very excited about, but most importantly by you all coming together to speak and heal in a very non-clinical process. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, tell others about it. And then at the end of the session, please do a group photo together so we can always hold those memories dear to us. All right, God bless
So
you
we
all.
can go ahead and take a quick 10 minutes and answer this question on the table. We can answer the group. Thank you.
Oh, we don't have a group.
Yeah, I just got to
We do them as a group?
Yeah.
Can we make a bigger group?
You want to join those?
Yeah, let's join others.
You want to join this?
You can join
We
us.
can join the, and then maybe we'll be seeing someone. So you join them, because there are 3. Or you can join them.
Yeah, we could do.
Questions. Oh, okay, sure.
Okay. So good afternoon.
That's one combined that you can share.
Who is a good writer? Because I'm assuming we have to write now.
So I guess the question, what does success mean
So
to
you
you?
can work on this.
What are those expectations?
So are we gonna share?
Yeah, you can share.
What does success mean to you? What is success?
So you can work on these.
Are we doing presentation afterwards?
Yeah, someone can. You can do it?
I can try. I'm not a good writer, but is there somebody comfortable taking notes?
I can take notes.
What is this? Yeah, I think this was good. Who's taking note? One by one. So you can. And then one, sharing